I've been killing myself making so many different mods and so many different things just to put out better videos. I've done JATO-powered Batmobiles. I've done moving fenders. I've done EV conversions, NOS, 6-wheel vehicles, and 3-wheeled vehicles. And on top of that, I'm working on many things. I'm working on articulating bodywork, moving spoilers, better superchargers, easier mod support for the mods that I do make for you guys, and I'm currently also working on a chunky off-road tire mod. But I think I need to take a break, and I'm sorry. So, I've been actually wondering about what I would actually do if I went to Pikes Peak. Now, going to Pikes Peak is very expensive. So my thought process is, why not just get a slower car, since I don't want to kill myself anyway, because it is the most dangerous race in the world. And I've been running this over in my head as a thought experiment for probably a couple of months now. What would I do if I went to Pikes Peak? So today we're gonna build that car that I've been thinking about. And that led me to this car. Now, when I was much younger, my brother crashed our brand new $120,000 S80 T6. Now, we didn't pay that much for it, but that's how much the retail market price was for a new one, but we'd bought one that was like a year old as a demo, all that sort of stuff. And he crashed it into the house. Yeah, so we got a loaner car whilst they were fixing it, and this was the car. Now, I have made it no secret that my favorite car company is Volvo. Oh, was Volvo? I don't know about modern Volvos, but Polestar, oh, that one's a good one. And ever since then, I've always liked this car in manual. So now that they're becoming like dirt cheap, this would probably be the car I'd go with. It's incredibly safe, the engine is fairly decent, the reliability is good enough. So today, I've grabbed the closest car body. I know it's not that close, but yeah, the closest car body I could, and we're going to make an S40 turbo manual. And we're gonna strip it out in the way in which I would do it for a thing. But this is probably also never going to happen unless I'm able to create a collaboration where somebody else in America makes it, and then I go over to say, like, I don't know, maybe Tavares or something, and they would make this car for me, and then I would take it to Pikes Peak, and then ultimately break down along the way. But yeah, no, like, this is the sort of thing that I would do. Just an S40, very baseline car, maybe stick a bleed valve on it. But we're gonna start off. This is going to be steel monocoque steel with a front transverse 4-cylinder engine. This is not the 5-cylinder. Now, I know everyone's like, oh, but the 5-cylinder is an amazing engine. Yeah, it is. But this cheap-ass car didn't come with a 5-cylinder turbo. Then we're gonna go with the McPherson strut, and I don't know what the rear suspension was, actually. That looks like multi-link. That is interesting. So they went to all this effort for a front-wheel drive car to have multi-link. I'm very impressed. Yay, multi-link. So we're off to a good start with good suspension setup. So let's create a new engine project. 83 and a 90 stroke. Wow, this is a very long stroke compared to bore. Goodness gracious. I had no idea they created such a weird engine. I always thought this was, oh, it's a 1.9 liter. I always thought it was a 2 liter. Even here it says it's a 2 liter. What the hell? What's going on? 1948. Yep, 1948. So it's, yeah, 1.95 basically. Dual over cans, 4 valves per cylinder, aluminium head, no variable valve lift, cast. Does it have variable valve timing? Oh, would you look at that? We've got turbo dimensions. Though I don't know which ones to follow, so this is all completely useless. We're gonna say that it's got a very basic cam, so we'll leave it at that. It does have variable valve timing, I believe. Compression, 9:1. Okay, that's a very low compression for the 90s, but whatever. This is the Volvo brand, and it's the S40T. Turbocharger. I'm gonna guess that this one was journal bearing steel and fuel economy. We reckon there was a 42 and a 53. That's a big exhaust housing. Far out. 54.3. Just gonna go with that's. Wow, that is so off kilter. And a 0.8 AR ratio. This is a big turbo! Oh my god! Volvo put this in their car? No, I must have done something wrong, but we're following a turbo instruction here, so it'll be fine. Injection, multi-point, single intake, and then a standard manifold. Then we're going to try to run it on, say, a premium, a little bit higher, so then we can tune the engine just a smidgen. We're gonna cut out all the catalytic stuff, all that kind of jazz, and just run a buttload of power. Well, so what sort of power are we making here? 118 kilowatts. and 230 Newton meters. We're generating too much power. But then again, you know what, actually, that was probably way down here. Yep, we're still generating way too much power. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm gonna say that this thing had less of a cam profile. We'll leave it about a 2-inch, because that's probably about where I was anyway. And then, yeah, now we're gonna tune it. Unfortunately, we run into RPM issues, and it hits at about 5,100 RPM. Yeah, I get the feeling the turbo's not quite right. Oh no. Yeah, alright, so this is for a completely different turbo, I think. I'm not entirely sure. I'm meant to be looking at the TD04L. I don't know what 12T means. I'm not much of a turbo expert, if I'm honest. 46 and 41, okay. Much better, except now we're generating too little horsepower. Also, why is it in horsepower? Why is it not in kilowatts? And kilowatts. Alright, now we're generating way too little power. God, it sucks that I have so much information, but I'm not sure if any of it is right. Alright, by what I've been able to tell, there's actually lots of different versions of it. So we're just going to give this 118 kilowatts and then fiddle with things from there. There we go. Basically, what we had the first time round. We did pretty well to get there again. What's the max RPM we can run at this? Okay, so that's what we want to have the RPM at. Now, let's start moving on. Aspiration, big intercooler, an extra boost, an extra 5 kilowatts and an extra 10 Newton meters. That's not a whole lot of extra power. But we also don't want this engine to get destroyed because we are on a budget, and if we lose our vehicle, the whole flight over there and all that sort of stuff is completely gone to waste. So we're not gonna run too much boost. Aftermarket fuel system though, that we can crank up to get as much power as possible. And then all that ignition timing. Sweet, there we go. 130 kilowatts, an extra 10 kilowatts for basically what we would consider a bleed valve and an aftermarket fuel system. So you're looking at less than 2 grand on the engine, probably considerably less. Now, this body does not look right, but we will try our darndest. So we're getting close. I just want to add one little extra thing so I can help visualize what this looks like. We use a cutaway and we're going to stick it down there. That helps a little bit, but not as much as I'd like. Anyway, let's move on. So this is obviously going to be a front-wheel drive, even though I would like a rear-wheel drive. And we're going to hopefully find a manual, and I believe there are 5-seat. Now, the reason why I chose this particular one also is because it's one of the cheapest turbo engines I could think of here locally when it comes to Volvos. You do really want a turbo engine when going up Pikes Peak because of the elevation change. And I believe that they came with just a regular viscous LSD, which is quite nice of them. Volvo is not really known for really encouraging sportiness. Gonna have a radial, and we're gonna stick a sports compound on there. I don't know how much semi-slicks cost, but I'm assuming quite a bit. Also, I think they're running something like 16s, so hopefully that's correct. Running alloy wheels, vented discs on the front, and I don't know about these ones, but usually they're all solid disc on the rear. We can run a little bit of an extra pad type if we need to, because they do sell a lot of aftermarket support for this stuff. You wouldn't think it being Volvo, but yeah, no, there is actually a lot of aftermarket support. These had no off tray, but we could just slap on an under tray, which would be really good for downforce and aerodynamics, something really cheap to do. I am actually going to be doing air on this thing and doing it to the best of what I can imagine. Gonna have not a great cooling airflow. These engines are not really meant for racing, so that could be problematic. Our brakes may get a little bit of airflow. Our seats. Now we're going to strip this down to a single seater, and it's going to be a sports seat with no entertainment whatsoever. Hydraulic power steering. These things do have ABS, thank the gods. Also has traction control, but we won't ever run that. Then the safety is quite advanced, so we're going to say advanced 90 safety, or do we go advanced 10 safety? Probably advanced 10 safety. So yeah, that's quite hefty and weightful. A standard spring. We can upgrade it to a gas monotube if we need to, and then sway bars. And there are kits for coilover suspensions for this, so yes, we're going to go with something that's quite sporty, or maybe even race. Then dump it as low as it'll go? Okay, good. Not that you really want to dump these things really low, because you want to have a car that's predictable going over bounces. How are we doing here? 185s? I suppose we could go bigger. Oh. If we put narrower tires on, we get just the perfect amount of oversteeriness from this front-wheel drive car. Now, I'm not a big fan of front-wheel drive, but when it comes to safety around corners, you're probably better off with this. And that's why I also chose Volvo, is because I would be more likely to survive in an accident with it. All right, let's go ahead and start trying to make this thing look like an actual Volvo S40. There we go with our Volvo branding. I think this is starting to slightly maybe take shape. that's actually starting to look somewhat what might resemble a Volvo, but only slightly. Well, the back end seems a little bit trickier to actually make look like a real Volvo. And I've noticed that these are not mirroring, but for some reason the cutouts are happening on the mirror. So I don't know, did Automation change something that broke their game recently? Because it's breaking quite a bit. From the front at least, it looks a little bit more like a Volvo than the rear. The rear is doing pretty abysmally. It'll have to do. Let's move on to doing things more like aerodynamics now. So the first thing you would do, well, I would do. Sorry, just had to put on the windshield wipers there for a second. I would put on a front splitter and to go with the under tray, yes, a rear diffuser and then a rear wing. Let's start with the front splitter, probably made of wood. Once again, the same sort of thing as last week. I must admit though, that video did really make me perk up and think, I want to do a series of just like real world cars. So hopefully that'll help with the front downforce. And it looks pretty good if I do say so myself. Would we paint it or we just leave it wood colored? You'd probably just leave it wood colored out of just sheer laziness, but I don't know, whatever. Just try to remember that I am not the one that would be making most of this. Most of this would be actually made by the person that I'd be collaborating with. So I could just get over there, save money on all my accommodations, and then immediately leave the moment that the thing is over. So, I mean, I can't ask much of this said collaborator, if said collaborator even existed. So, yeah, we want to keep it very basic. Actually, I think, yeah, we could run an exhaust out of the hood like that. That works for me, doesn't it work for you? I think that's a genius idea. Right out of the turbo and right through the hood. Great. That's dumb, but sure, that's something I'd do. I put one of the little flapper things on the top though, but I don't have the things for that currently. All right, let's go ahead and, oh, you know what? If we're running it like this, we probably don't need another rear wing, but we'll put one on anyway, because I don't want to oversteer off a cliff, especially at high speeds. That's one of my scarier thoughts to have. I suppose we could go with the default type wing that comes with the vehicle. I just don't think there is a wing that looks like that, unfortunately. There we go. That's the sort of wing that existed on these cars. So that's what we're dealing with. Do I think that's enough? Maybe, but I would also love to have a huge amount of extra downforce. But I think that's asking a little too much. So yeah, I think I am happy with this. This is a very basic car. We've probably spent an extra $5 grand on getting it up to this spec. And what does Automation reckon it does around this track? Me do English? Yes, I suppose so. 2.5 minutes, not great. How much does this vehicle weigh? That's pretty decent, actually. What does the aerodynamics say? Reckons we're gonna have a lot of oversteer. Just having a look at these brakes here. I cannot wait for the new brake update. This is ridiculous, like having to run minuscule brakes. And this car isn't even very light. It's 1,100 kilos. Well, I suppose we can only take it over to BeamNG to do a proper test. How does this thing do? It feels as if it could probably have better tires on the front. Yeah, this thing isn't really oversteering a whole lot. It is quite understeery still, but it feels lively enough, so I think it's a pretty good car. Okay, let's do this. We've got 338 and 248. So at about 100 kilometers an hour, we're creating 20-ish kilograms of downforce on the front, and probably double that on the rear, so interesting turnout of numbers. Yeah, this rear end still looks nothing like a Volvo. The front end, however, I do think looks pretty darn close. All right, let's go take over our absolutely beastly vehicle to the Pikes Peak track. I am doing absolutely horrible with names today. All right, before we start the actual race, we're gonna test two things. One, to make sure these brakes don't cook, and two, to see how it actually deals on these sorts of corners. And yes, I will be controlling it manually when it comes around to the actual race time. But now I just want to see how this thing does around here. And coming up to the first corner, brakes are getting a bit hot, but they're staying at a reasonable temperature so far. Oh, burp time, sorry about that. And the corners themselves, they're feeling fairly good. A little bit more skittish than what I would like if I was to take this car up here realistically. Oh, but then we get a lot more traction on the rear. Much better. And slow enough that we're not going a bazillion miles an hour. Okay, so I've come to the realization that most of this car is fine when it comes to the brakes, but I would like a little bit of extra cooling. So maybe I would do a little bit of ducting over there to make sure that these brakes do not fade. I do know that there are slotted and drilled rotors available for these cars, so I would probably also do a little bit of that. But these brakes, they soak in a bit of heat, but then they just don't cool off. And if I'm going up here, that kind of height, yeah, I'm going to want to have, like, brakes that don't fail. Because, yeah, that's scary. So the brakes themselves are fine. We may overpower them a little bit, but we're going to go into aerodynamics and we're going to increase some brake airflow, which means we're going to go in here. We're going to delete these and just make them like holes here for the air ducts to go through. All right, let's go do this again. Are we ready to take our vehicle around? I think we are. That's a lot of wheel spin. Okay. Brum, brum, bitches. Well, I made it up on my first go. I'm getting much better at Pikes Peak, if I do say so myself. But it looks like it's still behind what I was able to do with that vehicle from last week. I think if I was to give this a few more tries, I'd easily be able to beat them. Let's try that out. My dream car must win out against shitty old hatchback. And it does, actually. We also do this in one attempt once again. But the big difference I think that's here with this vehicle is the fact that this one has a good differential on it. It's got an LSD, so it's really able to put that power down a lot better, which is quite important for these tight and twisty corners when it comes for a front-wheel drive car. In a rear-wheel drive car, you might be able to get away with it, but with how the suspension geometry works in a front-wheel drive, you really do need that. And you can see here that I can also brake quite late because we're not going particularly fast, which is very comforting for somebody that would actually be driving this up here. Like, sure, a proper race driver would be able to deal with higher speeds, but I'm not a proper race driver. I've been on a track like a handful of times. In fact, I'm actually considering doing some more up at the local raceway here in South Australia called Malala Raceway and taking a car around here. But this car is so good, like it handles under brakes, it just does a good job. And that's that suspension coming down, making the suspension really stiff and very even around the vehicle, and that ABS, which I would hope would stay on the vehicle and still functioning. I know that ABS systems do tend to fail occasionally, but I do think that it's pretty important for racing up a hill like Pikes Peak for maybe somebody that's not like the guy that won with that Volkswagen, or the guy with the Escudo, yeah, Jesus, God, those guys are so fast, and I wish that one day I would be that fast, but I doubt it. Those guys, like, they're born into motor racing most of the time. Their parents help them do that sort of stuff most of the time. Yeah, I didn't really have that. My brother did rallying when he was young, but when I said that I wanted to do stuff, it was just met with like a, whatever. And I had to basically fund it all myself for the majority of the time. And then the majority of the time was just drifting anyway, which was just fun. Also, I want to point out how well this car just goes around corners. You see here, no real understeer, all that sort of stuff. And with the proper suspension setup, most cars could do this. But with this kind of sweet spot between a long vehicle of about 3 meters and a short vehicle of about 2 meters, at about 2.5-ish, this is like that perfect tier for this mountain. It's not going to oversteer dramatically on long corners at high speeds. And here at short corners, it's just nimble enough that it can easily make it around these corners. So watch here. We're going to brake too much, obviously, and then we go around here quite nicely and come out of the corner just absolutely fantastically. And with that LSD able to help pull us through that corner, it's just like, it's still slow, but it's just exactly what I want. Oh my God, did I do it? Wow, 2 times in a row with a brand new vehicle I went up without crashing, and I beat that shitty little Holden Barina clone. Wow, I am actually thoroughly impressed of my improvement of driving skills. I also really do like this car, especially from the front end, not so much from the rear end. It's fun. I enjoy it. This is pretty cool. Now it's time to take this to the full long track, though I don't know why I spawned down here. Whatever, you get the idea. Let's go down and do the full one now. Let's be fair. The dream of any motorsports person is to at least break the 10-minute barrier going up Pikes Peak. Like, that is a bare minimum of what people would find like as a really good trophy or a feather in their cap. But I don't think we're going to be able to do that, if I'm entirely honest. I feel that I'm probably going to do somewhere around a 13-seconder, though I'm not sure. We're about to find out, though. I just realized that my top speed is really low, and I may want to go fix that. Oh shit, I wasn't paying attention. I looked at the speedo. Frick. Let's pretend like that never happened. Now you understand why I want a slightly safer cars, because apparently I suck at racing. And I probably should never actually do this. So we're actually just gonna fast forward through this, but ironically, the very next time I went up there, I was able to do it. So that means that I was able to do this in 3 tries, one of which was because I was contemplating what I should do about the speedo. But even though the speedo was pretty bad, sorry, not the speedo itself, but sorry, the limited top speed by the differential choice that I forgot to clarify. I would say that this could have probably gone maybe a minute faster if I had better gearing. Sure, this gearbox works for the short track, but for this long track, it really does need that extra top speed. But you know what? Not a particularly bad vehicle altogether. And I am fast forwarding through because it is very uneventful. This car is actually very controllable, and there is a link in the description. And also, if you haven't yet, maybe hit subscribe. And yeah, that's the lap. My goodness, this car is really good, and this has to be my cleanest lap that I have ever done. In fact, I'm probably actually going to upload a fully unedited version of this where I just talk about how easy and clean this race was. So we've done an 11:27, which does put us ahead of the Kangoo Pubit RX. So at least we have beaten that one. We've also beaten the Ace Beefcake, but maybe not beat the Paul Blart car. That thing was terrifying. Let's do a quick free roam here and have a look to see how much damage. Oh, I actually lost my splitter at some point. What happened there? And I lost my rear diffuser. What the frick? Huh. When did that come off? That is so weird. Maybe this thing doesn't need that much downforce. That's a bit of a scary thought to go down. Like, I don't know. I can't really talk for what should or shouldn't be required in this car. Just have more of downforce, please. I don't care if I lose a lot of top speed or whatever. Oh boy, that gearing ratio. Oh, that was questionable as a choice, but okay. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video today. If I do an extended version of this, it will be in the link in the description. But for now, I'll catch you guys next time. Goodbye.